Hi there, I'm Dr. Ute, an accredited and chartered counseling psychologist, a chartered coaching psychologist, a fellow of the higher education here in Britain, and a therapist. I welcome you to the podcast. The podcast is a little bit different to how other podcasts are working. My guests are asking me questions. They are often from my population of students who said, look, we really want to ask you questions we can't ask in the lecture hall. But this podcast is also open to you. If you have questions you ever wanted to ask a psychologist, DM me and you will be sitting next to me very soon. Enjoy the podcast. Hi, Richard. It's so great to have you here. And look, I'm really interested what questions you're going to bring. And I'm pretty sure all of you are interested also in asking a psychologist, well, whatever you wanted to ask her in the first place. So immediately, over to you.
Oh, interesting. So I think what got me thinking was obviously, during our lectures, there were so many things that came up for us as students that really, you think about your everyday life and your relationships with other people and the things that go on. And I guess we wouldn't really normally get an opportunity to sort of ask these kind of questions. So it's really nice to be able to sit down and actually go over some of these things from a curious perspective. So the thing that got me thinking was actually to do with dating and online dating apps. And, that's not the kind of question that we normally get to ask, but there's a few things that I've always wanted to ask someone who's a psychologist about that. And I think the way that we meet now is like increasingly like everything is online, and that's just the reality of everyday life. And I guess that's frustrating for some people, and it can be a little bit difficult at times doing things online. But I just wonder whether there is actually something that we can learn about ourselves from using dating apps. Like if you were like literally in the room with someone and they were using a dating app and you were the therapist, like what would that be like for you? And is there something that we can learn about ourselves from using dating apps?
That is such a great question. I just want to repeat that, of course, I don't know anything about the questions anyone is bringing. So everyone brings stuff at me because that's what true psychology is like, right? It's bringing questions from real life, and my training, my brain, my heart, my soul should be able to answer it. Full disclosure. The reason why I have such a big smile on my face is because I'm dating at the moment, also using dating apps as a apparently woman of a mature age, which puts another spin on it. So allow me to answer that question from multiple perspectives. Mm-hmm. From a perspective of a psychologist who actually has used a dating app in therapy with a patient as a tool for exposure therapy, as a woman who is dating, but then also as this probably gestalt or human being in between who is a psychologist and a woman who goes to dates. Which one do you want me to answer first of these three different aspects?
It's difficult to separate all parts of yourself. I think the kind of being in therapy with someone, using it as a tool of exposure therapy, I thought that's really interesting. I think I would have never have thought of that, like as from my perspective, and obviously, like, I have my own experience of that as well. But that's something that I think is really unique. So I think, I'd love to hear more about that. Like, what's that like?
So I think what dating apps can help you is to really start thinking about who do I actually want to be with. Right? It's a downfall also because you are already excluding people who you might actually like, but you've excluded them because you don't have the qualities you tick the box for. But if you use it in a therapeutic sense, it gives you a lot of ability to talk about what is it you're actually interested in as a human being, as a person. And what very quickly comes apparent is quite often people say, but I don't know if I can actually ask for that, or am I actually having the right to say no to a particular person or no to a particular behavior. So in that sense, not only going on a dating app, but looking, creating, thinking about how to use it is the first part of exposing yourself to something you want to do. And then, of course, dating, look, regardless, right, whether we talk Pride and Prejudice or we're talking, I don't know, Bumble or Hinge, right? There's a big fear around rejection, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah.
So this hasn't changed across times, ages. It's not gender dependent in any shape or form. So what a dating app can actually help you to expose yourself to is this fear of rejection. Because rejections are going to come in. You know, I know, you probably know too. They're going to come in left, right and center. Yeah. And they can come in different shape and forms. So people don't reply. People ghost. People reply and then ghost. Yeah. People say yes and then they say no. Or you say you are actually coming and then the person doesn't turn up. Or you think you know how the person looks and then when they come around the corner you're like, wow, I would love to have that filter too.
Yeah, I think everyone's definitely experienced that at some
I don't know if I've forgotten. So look, if you do this on your own, I think it's pretty scary. Especially if you are somebody who fears rejection and for whom rejection quite often means I, as the self I am, the person I am, is rejected and rejectable as a value and as a valued human being on this planet. Because I don't think what we know when we go dating is this sentence, you know, you kind of deliver yourself to an address, which is, you know, wherever you date. And if the other person says no, the only thing that has happened is you delivered yourself to the wrong address. It has got nothing to do with your personal value. But of course, that doesn't come to play. So I've used dating apps, as I said, in therapy, especially around the fear of rejection.
Yeah, and it's, I guess in some way it's kind of like what you're seeing is it's like a shortcut to someone's like core beliefs, like in that moment when you're in there with them in therapy. Because you were talking about like rejection, and it's, I suppose, like how someone might respond to being rejected. Like in that moment, like if you were there with them, you can really ask them questions about that and uncover more. Whereas, you know, and I think that it's interesting to think about it in that way, because when you're just like swiping through Hinge or whatever, and you feel like that sense of rejection, like you might not always question that or think about like, why am I feeling like that? So I think that that's really interesting to sort of taking from this conversation to kind of next time I'm in that situation to sort of think like, why do I feel that way? Like, what does this mean for me? Like, and I think that's a good thing.
I think it's also something which I'm really, I would actually like to say passionate about, is to make therapy real. You know, we have this, we're sitting in the room and we're talking about stuff, but quite often it's hypothetical, and I think this doesn't help us. You know, therapy has to enter real life and real life has to enter therapy. So of course, I mean, I want you to sit there with your dating app. Because, I mean, if this is what you do and if this is what you struggle with, why would we not want to work with it, right? Yeah,
you're bringing in their actual reality into the therapy. That's really good. That brings me kind of quite nicely into the other thing that I wanted to ask you
As
about.
if I had known, but I haven't.
Which is kind of to do with like courage, and like you know, there's two parts to it really. Like you as a therapist, you know, when you are in, you know, as a therapist, in what moment do you need your courage most? And I guess as a patient, what time, you know, do you need to call and ask for courage the most during therapy?
So I have I don't want to call it a tagline, but it's something I say to every new client or every new patient or anyone who wants to work with me, is you have to bring three things. You have to bring courage, you have to bring curiosity, and you have to bring kindness. Otherwise, therapy and working with me and developing this is not going to work. Look, what does courage actually mean? Courage means to do something despite fear. Courage means moving into the unknown. is making decisions, having this big leap of faith, as Kierkegaard says, because you do not know the outcome. And to me, what therapy is, or what therapeutic work is you are traveling into yourself in order to understand the unknown in yourself. And that is, excuse my language, that is bloody scary at times. So I think if you really want to engage with change, you need courage all the time. As the person who comes to therapy. Mm-hmm. For me, as a therapist, as a psychologist, look, my basic thought is I need to get it right for the person I'm working with. It's a huge honor and it's a huge responsibility to sit with somebody in the room, or walk or jump or sit on the floor. I'm not just sitting on chairs, right? That's just not, I'm a bit more quirky than that. But to be with somebody in the room, I need to get it right. As often as I can, I make mistakes. Of course, I'm a human being, in order to help the person to get where they need to go. And very often this is a huge amount of courage that is needed, because look, sometimes I got to call a person out. Yeah, I have been known to say, we've listened to the story again and again. On a level from 0 to 10, how bored are you? That's not easy to say, right? And even though people call me Bootcamp Ute, it's just not easy to say. Yeah. But look, it doesn't help encouraging the person to do the same thing all over again, because they've done that. Yeah. Sometimes it's too much for patients, I get that, or for clients. And I ask them to then say, whoa, that's a lot. But this is also courage. And this is the courage of taking responsibility for the both of us to go as much as we can and as we can bear into the unknown in order to learn more. Because, I mean, if you don't go to the unknown, why would you want to go to therapy?
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because the words that you use to describe, you know, on a scale of 0 to 100, how bored are you of this story? Like, before, you know, we sat down to have this conversation, like I was looking over the notes from all of our lectures together, and that was, I'd written that like kind of ad verbatim from one of our classes, and it's what kind of inspired that set of questions, because it's like, you know, the principles of what you bring to therapy, you were saying like courage, and sometimes it's like asking those difficult questions of people and being quite direct, I guess, can like, what it can really sort of like cut through to people's something, you know, maybe a bit unexpected that kind of triggers something in them, and that's might be what's really needed. But it's like you need a lot of courage to like make that decision in the moment, like for that person.
Yes, and for me personally, I mean, I'm German. When I came to the UK, and I always admired that way of how English people talk, right? I mean, you guys speak with the words you're not using, which I think is phenomenal. And I tried this, I think, for 10 years. And I lost my own soul over that. And I personally took the decision to say, that's not me. It's just not me. I will never be this English/British diplomat that runs around. That's not how I speak. That's not how my soul lives. That's not how my heart beats. And that's not how my brain thinks. So I signed the contract of being genuine, and I'm direct, right? I say this as a fair warning to everyone who meets me. Some people think it's a joke, it's not. And we go from there, right?
Interesting. Maybe as a culture, we need to learn to be more courageous in the words that we use. It's a good example of that.
I don't know. I think, you know, we all have our perks, and isn't it nice to be different?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think it really kind of that choosing the right pathway for someone, I think, is another thing that like I really just going back over the notes from our time together when you were our lecturer, and there was a quote that really summed that up nicely, that like I think when I think about what therapy is and what's going on as a therapist, and kind of how much responsibility you take for someone else's healing. And there was like a quote that you had, which was like you're creating a healing pathway that suits that person at that time, and that you will be able to sort of like walk with them in that pathway. But it's up to them to decide kind of whether they want to, you know, take that step forward, basically. And I think that, to me, like, it's a really beautiful way of kind of summing that all up, I think. And I was just kind of reflecting on that today, like in my notes from when we had that class together. And yeah, I think there's kind of, you know, there's something in that kind of how much responsibility you take for like someone else's healing, and like you can't take all of the responsibility for it, can you? There's like a bit of a balance, right?
I think Alfred Adler has this beautiful example of where are the boundaries, right? And yes, he spoke a lot about, of course, social societies and social politics and education and family structures. But when I read him, I take his philosophy and for me into my private life, yes, but also predominantly into my life as a psychologist. And he says there is a rule, and to whom belongs the outcome. And to whomever the outcome belongs, this is the person who has to take responsibility. And this is such a simple rule, but for me, you know, and anything and everything that is profound is probably very simple. So it's the person's responsibility to engage with healing, to want healing, to do everything for healing. It's my responsibility to create the best framework possible, right? The holding, the support, the confidentiality, the calling out, the courage, the compassion. I'm not very good in empathy, very good in compassion, so I'm told. This is what I do, but I can't heal for you, can I? I mean, you know, I can offer you the water, you got to drink. I need to make sure that the water is the water you need. I can offer you different waters, but the choice is yours.
Yeah.
The taking is yours, the digestion is yours. And I think that we need to hold this always. That healing I can be the person who walks with you through hell, but my goodness, you gotta walk.
And there is like this, obviously there's a lot of compassion in that, but it's, you know, when you were talking about empathy and like this, you know, for anyone who's like, when you talked about empathy and compassion and like the difference that has, like that, I think that's something that we've had that conversation before, but I think that's something quite interesting as well, like the downside to empathy and how kind of our understanding of that's kind of, you know, what your perspective of that is, like when that can be a bad thing, too much empathy.
Yeah, I mean, there is this beautiful book out by Bloom, Against Empathy, a passionate argument for compassion. And he cites this research that was done around people donating for a person or for a group of people who have AIDS. And the only difference is one group, and it's a fictional narrative in order for the research purpose. One group of people had AIDS because of blood transfusion.
Right.
The other ones because of unprotected sex. And the idea was to which group is given more money. Guess.
I guess people wanted to give more money to the people who had received blood transfusions. Correct, because they felt like they
more empathic towards those ones, and those ones with unprotected sex, there is more as well. It's kind of it's your fault type of thing, right? So it's really paraphrasing. I'm happy to put the paper in the chat for people to read.
Yeah, and it's like both groups need the thing just as much as the other, right? So it's kind of like, you know, but then the empathy is kind of like taking away that choice for them.
Yeah.
In a sense, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So empathy is not intrinsically the goody thing we have made it out to be in social discourse, right? We can have, of course, a long discussion whether social discourse and the meaning we've given to empathy now is right. But I think we need to be careful with that. If it's the only guidance we are having, it's probably not a very functional one in all situations, in all environments.
I see. So less empathy, more compassion. That's the, yeah.
I would say so, because for me, compassion is always intrinsically combined with what can we do to make it better. It's always combined with reflecting and personal insight, growing in order to be a better role model, in order to be better for the world with you, right?
Yeah, and empathy is like the example that you gave from that book, I suppose. Like, there's something more, it's like a morality thing in that, which I think is a bit sort of, there's an element of judgment involved in that, I guess, which is why it's not always intrinsically like a pure thing, because you might be thinking about what's bad, what's good, and you know, what's good and bad might come from like all different sources that might not really be, you know, what's real and what that other person is experiencing, right?
And look, we all do it, right? Everyone does it, of course, because we're human beings. So these things that we are discussing, they cannot be translated one-to-one into real life. But I think it's worth thinking about it and slowing down from time to time when you make a decision and asking, what does this decision drive, right? And coming back to dating, right? What does it drive? What is the driver of me, I don't know, putting 15 filters on a dating app? Or what is the driver me ghosting somebody? Because I'm pretty sure everyone who has been ghosted has also ghosted somebody else, right?
Yes.
Why is it so hard for us to say, look, you probably a very nice person, you're just not for me?
Yeah, and that's compassionate, isn't it? So
that's honest, you know, it's very genuine, and I think it is compassionate. And what it is, it's respectful. Because I think respect, I know it's a very old word and a very old thing, but I think respect is something that can really go out of the window when you're using dating apps.
Yes, because you're not physically in the same space as someone, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I would argue we can't touch the other person. I agree with that. However, think about when you use a dating app and you find this person and you think, ooh, have you had this? So you have an emotion, haven't you? You have a physical reaction. You have a narrative in your head. So all of these things that are triggered also as if you would be in a physical space. So yes, if we are saying a physical space must be reduced to the physicality of touching a body, I would agree that dating apps are not in a physical space. However, if we are saying emotions and thoughts and sentience, right, a physical reaction in your belly, for example, is something that is based on a physical behavior, then we kind of are now coming into probably a philosophical discussion.
Yeah.
How much this is a physical space also. Because you're triggered, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's the same physiological reactions that you would have if they were there with you.
Yeah, you can't go over and smooch the person, of course.
Yeah. And then, so why is it like, where is the sort of, you know, the unkindness, I guess, or like the fact that, where does that come from then? Why is that different to meeting someone in an, you know, the one-to-one way? Why is that different? Like,
I think we can hide.
Yeah.
And I would say we are all cowards, aren't we? And if we can hide, we will. And it's so much easier to press delete or block or swipe than to look somebody in the eye and say, you know what, thanks for the beer, thanks for the glass of wine, or thanks for the water, or whatever. I think we call it a day because
Yeah.
it's just not for me.
Yeah, and I think if you do that, do you think that it would make it easier to feel rejection if you have the courage to actually sort of be really upfront with someone like that? Like, I talk theoretically because it's something that I've never done, but like, I think, do you think that that would kind of have that reaction on you as a person, like, if someone did that?
If we put a second behavior to it, if I allow myself to say no to you, then I give you also the okay to say no to me.
Yeah.
And once we have this as a mutual agreement, and is that the you does not need to be a particular person, then I think we start this thinking process of, we're just not a good fit. It doesn't mean I'm not a valuable, wonderful, loving person.
Amazing. Well, I feel like we've meandered a lot, but there's definitely some really interesting takeaways from that. So thank you for answering all of my questions. And
thank you for asking.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching.
Thanks.
See you soon.